Welcome back to Build Up. So, the show where we talk to the operators that are actually doing the work of growing a business. Today, I'm joined by Tej Gill, Director of Growth and Innovation at Nijjer Accountants, a family firm that's gone from 6 people to 27 across 4 locations, made some acquisitions along the way, and most impressively, done it while the owners went from 13 days a week of client work between them down to zero. Tej, welcome to the show.
Hi, Freddie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So take me back to 2021. You and your wife, Jasmine, your father-in-law were doing 13 days a week of client work between the three of you. What did an
Yeah.
average week actually look like?
um, it was a lot of spreadsheets, would be the summary of it. Yeah, 2021, it's a strange world, wasn't it? It's post-COVID. People were getting to grips with kind of, I suppose, our life had changed, and our life had really changed. We had our third child right before COVID, like 2 weeks before. And we had two that were homeschooling. And so COVID itself was like a blur, right? All I remember was it was sunny, and that's about it. Apart from that, the rest of COVID is an absolute blur. But the world was changing, and I think COVID allowed for people to start reinventing what they were doing as well in their businesses. It was a nice kind of a circuit breaker, wasn't it, in that respect? And a lot of people changed not only their own kind of outlook on life and stuff, but yeah, people took the opportunity to rethink how their business worked. Um, and I suppose, now it's probably made people more amenable to things like AI and tech that's come in as well. So I think COVID had its positives. But back then, 2021, a work week for us was very much like, right, what are the client deadlines? Is it VAT return week? Is it end of month sets of accounts and things like that? Because, so stepping back from that, the practice has been around since the 1990s. Say, my father-in-law set it up. And my wife came to work with him about 15 years ago. I stopped working in London um, around 10 years ago now. And then I joined here around 7 years ago. So initially, it was just kind of come in and carry on doing what we were doing. And what we were was a collection of accountants, each one taking a piece of work from start to finish. So you were going from, right, what's the data from the client all the way through to the accounts, and then trying to give them some advice and some value with it as well. So it was very siloed, I suppose, and it was very much driven by the deadlines that were in front of us and driven by outcomes for what the client needed. Um, and that was what we were doing as directors of the business. It was actually just delivering client work, which um, I suppose at the time you knew there was a better way to do things, but it was the way that things were being done at that point. But that around then is then when we started, right, well, how do we actually do this differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, COVID did change everything, and a lot of, accountants, owners, especially in every industry, it just changed everything, right? Like it kind of, obviously, you can take the negatives from it, but the positives are that business wise can be done a lot more remotely, right? You can speak to people on things like this, and just trying to automate it as much as you can, I suppose, and also just
Yeah,
making the business more efficient, right?
yeah, completely. I remember speaking to somebody late 2019, and it was a tech business, and there was a client investing in it. So can you speak to these people? It was a medical tech business, and the guy goes, "Can we have a Zoom call?" I did not know what a Zoom call was at that point, right? I did not know this app existed, and that is where COVID allowed some of these things to just become second nature now. Right now, Zoom, like Google, is not a piece of software; it's actually a verb, right? You have a Zoom, you do a Zoom and Zooming or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's yeah, it was kind of a watershed for a lot of those things, and I think it's definitely helped people to change their business and make it better, and made things that maybe industries that were stale, they've had to reinvent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you told me something, you came across this framing where there are 4 parts to kind of like any firm, right? So pricing, people, processes, and position. And where did that come from? And what was the moment that you realized you needed the system rather than just working harder?
Yeah, I think. Well, I can't take the credit for that. That came from a mentor that I actually just happened to find at that point as well. Much I would love to take credit for that, but it kind of comes to that point where I said, I felt something needed to change, but I wasn't sure where to begin. It was kind of overwhelming, as to be frank. Right, there was that innate desire to just want to do more, but then you're looking at the work going, well, how's this going to get done? You're looking at the systems you're using, thinking, well, there's definitely tech out there that's better than this, and it was a little bit of overwhelm of where to start. And since then, I've come across a book called The One Thing, and the basic premise of the book is, what's the one thing you could do now that has such an impact that everything else becomes irrelevant afterwards? And so those four pillars that I came across at the time, which were people, pricing, processes, and promotion. So that the marketing one is essentially what promotion is. So looking at those, you could attack every single one, but really, we know that spread yourself too thin and nothing works, right? So you got to pick the one that works, gives you the biggest bang for your buck, right? The one thing such that everything else becomes less important afterwards. And so really looking at that, you have to take the time, and this is where people, when they're running their business, get stuck so much in the day to day, they don't actually take the time to step back and reflect and actually assess what needs addressing. And that might even be that some people haven't taken the time to step back and think about where they want their business to end up either.
Mm.
So I think the real turning point was, one, accepting that something needed to change. Two, I didn't necessarily know the answers, so I sought them out. And then three was taking that time to actually think about designing a business and a life that we wanted, me and Jasmine, that we both wanted. And so we came across this framework. And to me, just thinking on it, it became quite obvious that the key one that allowed the others to become easier was the pricing. You already have an existing client base. You know that the client base hasn't been repriced for a period of time. And so rather than going and hiring people, going and trying to put processes in place, or trying to launch a great marketing, positioning campaign, the sensible thing was, well, let's just make sure actually what we have is being maximized. So the pricing is the place we started. And I think if a lot of businesses just did that and looked at their pricing, and it's not just a case of going to clients and saying, right, we're charging you 25% more, because that will lead to an exodus. It's actually looking at the value you're providing them and working out how actually you capture a piece of that value. That's really what pricing is about.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Obviously, that logic kind of makes complete sense, really, when you're first starting out, right? I mean, the numbers follow the numbers always.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was speaking to another founder actually yesterday, and they do their pricing monthly rather than yearly, and they have different brackets, and they base it on the last year sometimes. So like, how many phone calls you get and all that type of stuff. So there's no kind of because a lot of accountants may do it like you do extra requests and they don't know what the end bill might be, right? So I think all the accountants are a little bit different, but some are quite similar in regards to pricing. But that always seems to be the one that is the one that drives, the biggest change.
Yeah. And what it does, it actually allows you to then go and work on your processes, work on your people, work on your promotion,
Mm,
because it's funded from those pricing changes. Yeah, if you were starting a business from scratch, your pricing is still important, because
mm,
you have to know that you're getting your slice of the value from what you're producing. But when you already have a client base, pricing is the number one place to start, because you already have customers, and you need to make sure those customers are serviced, of course, but also that you're getting what you need from it, so that you can deliver and go on and deliver further service and better service. And it's something that's not static. And that point about monthly reviews, we do this as well. So we go through our clients every month as their year ends coming up and say, right, what have we done in the last year? What what have they grown to? How many bookkeeping entries do we have? Are we doing the VAT return? So it's all based on what's going on in the client's business, but it's making sure that it's consistent across everyone, which I think is the other part that business owners, and particularly professional services firms, get caught in the trap. Trap might not be the right word, but get caught in the trap of, well, clients, relationships, and all that stuff, and you start charging different people different prices.
mm.
We're talking about systemizing a business and picking the life you want to live. You need things to work without your discretion. And so that's where these pricing systems come in. So as much as you can make it formulaic, the easier you're making it for you get to get out of parts of the business, which means it's easier for the business to work without you. And like you said at the start, back in 2021, I was full time, father-in-law was full time, so that's 10 days, and my wife was 3 days a week. So that's 13 full days a week on client delivery and VAT returns and tax returns and phone calls and all that stuff. And yeah, that's down to between us now on client work, 3 days.
Fantastic. Oh, that is brilliant.
Yeah, and it's been a journey. You go in, you get out, you go in a bit again, you get out again. But as long as you know where it is you want to get to, then you know when you're on track, when you're off track, you course correct.
Yeah. How did the conversations go with the clients? Did you lose any?
Yeah, there were a couple, and it's always far less than you think. And I think this is probably the other mental block that a lot of people have around changing prices is clients will leave, and clients will leave. But if a client leaves you because of the price if a client's joined you because of the price you're charging, they'll leave you because of the price you're charging. And I think the conversations that we had were so what I actually did first was I tried to pick the ones that I thought would be easiest, that would definitely go ahead with it. They'd have no issues, long-standing relationships and all that stuff. You thought, right, get those easy wins under your belt, build that belief, build that momentum. And actually a couple of those conversations did not go so well actually as I thought they might. And one of them left. One had a rant and then stayed. But then actually the conversation just got easier because you do realize that you provide a valuable service to them and the relationship is important. And I think one issue that I think people have sometimes is the client might well have a rant and somebody will go, the other person may respond to that. I think you got to just accept that they want to get it off their chest, let them get it off their chest. They will cool down, and then you go back to them again, because there's a stickiness in what we do. And so actually there is a value in the relationship, and the client sees that value. So probably half a dozen out of a few hundred left. So not the end of the world. So I would encourage people, if they're in that situation, to bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And half a dozen out of a few hundred. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
No, exactly. And I think that's the problem is, and remembering back to then, it's knowing the story I told myself beforehand was that it would be a problem, and prove myself wrong, which is good.
Yeah, you said something on our first call that kind of stuck with me, that you have to make your business into a boring machine, right? So you can sprinkle the fun in. Unpack that for me.
Yeah, I think people have their reasons for starting their own business, and often it's either because they either think they can do it better than where they are right now, or they have a passion for it. But in reality, if you don't build a business that's boring, you build a business that is exciting. And an exciting business is one that has ups and then downs.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's sustainable. That's not something that makes your life easy. Now, unless you run a business because you absolutely love business is meant to be there to support something else in your life, right? So it's meant to provide your life or whatever it is else the other things are you want. And so fundamentally, you want to make a business as predictable, as regular, and as normal as possible. And that is something that's boring, right? Something where each week what's going to happen. And there will still be ups and downs, but in that case, you already know how you deal with those ups and downs as well. I've gone through cycles of running this place with a forecast and without a forecast. And those without a forecast months are the most stressful. Whereas when you know, okay, well, this is what I expect is going to happen, you'd be amazed how close you actually end up to those results. So a boring machine is really what you want. Like, you want it running like a
well-oiled machine,
finely tuned engine.
Yeah,
exactly.
Brilliant. This one might not get you in trouble with your peers, right? I mean, you told me the accountants love romanticizing what they do, pretending it's not a product, right? But it is a product. Defend that.
Yeah, I think there's two things actually that I think is that professional service in general, probably not just accountants, have, and one is like this real, almost the feeling of being too noble, right? You're too noble for your own good. Like, we couldn't possibly increase our prices. I couldn't possibly talk about sales. I couldn't possibly charge extra for that thing. But the reality is that you need to. You're providing a service to somebody, and that service needs to be captured. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to grow and sustain and survive. So, I think the point that it's a product is the first part of getting your head around that, because the thing with services is that it feels like it's bespoke. And then the second terminology issue is client, because a client implies there's some really deep, meaningful relationship, which there is. And when you get to that point, but in sometimes the phrase customer is a lot more productive, because customers in any other world come and go. Somebody buys a product is a customer. They might buy another product. They might not. Somebody's a client. There's a different inference with that, which makes people behave in different ways from the service provider's perspective. So as much as you can turn it into a product, which again comes back to the boring bit, that people know what's included within it, how it's going to work, how it's going to be delivered, documented, systemized, and all that sort of stuff, it becomes an easier thing to sell and an easier thing to deliver consistently. Um, and I think the point about where people often get hung up on a service is that, well, no two clients are the same. You know, there's bits and bobs that need customizing for that person. And actually, one of our team members said the same thing when we were talking initially about how do we, systemize accounts production. Was that, well, there's always things that each client has that is slightly different. This one has a different thing going through, and this one has a different thing going, even if they're in the same industry. And my point to that was that it's like, every car out on the road is not the same. Every Ford is not the same. Every Ford, do they still make Fiestas? Focus. Every Ford Focus is not the same, except 95% of it is. And 95% of the car is the same. The things that might get changed is the paintwork, the upholstery, the speakers, whatever. Those 5% of bits at the end that get changed make it more unique to what that particular person wants. But guess what? There's somebody else that has a blue Ford Focus with the grey trim and the Bose sound system. I don't think they put Bose sound system in Focuses, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And accounts production is exactly the same. 95% of what happens in that is the same. The 5% at the end is the difference. Even when you think about what we call project work, right? So inheritance tax advice, let's take as an example. 95% of that is going to be the same for people. People have got the same problem, and there are the same few levers that you pull. It's just the sequence in which they're done. So that 5% of detail is different. And so if you can make 95% of it productized and systemized, the 5% is where the magic is sprinkled in, where the individual bit is done, where the client manager adds their value, and where the relationship part comes into it. But 95% of it is something that can be turned into a boring machine.
Yeah, no, I think it's like everything, isn't it? Like, a lot of companies probably don't think they have a product, but they have, also the team of products, right? Everyone's got their own relationship with different clients, etc. I mean, they're a product of themselves, as well as, promoting the business that they're working with.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the team, I guess taking that car manufacturing analogy a step further, the team are essentially the manufacturing facility, right? They will be the ones that are putting the parts of the business together. And actually, where I said right back at the beginning that we were like a collection of accountants where we were taking stuff through from start to finish, it was using the car analogy, it's the same as having one person walking along and adding each bit of the car. And we all know what happened when Ford created a conveyor belt cycle, right? And actually started churning things out on mass production like that. It just got better and more efficient, and more was capable of being delivered to the clients.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know you gave your team client call scripts, right? You told me that they've kind of
Yeah.
internalized them so well they don't even use them anymore. Like, what's the lessons there for owners who are kind of like scared of making, their people sound robotic?
Yeah, I think if if you're going to make them sound robotic, they will sound robotic, right?
Mm.
The thing that we have with scripts is they're not a script. It's a crib sheet, let's say, or something that
Mm.
is a guide. Make sure you hit these notes. However you want to phrase it individually to make it sound like it's you. It's just making sure that those key points are raised and understood and made. That's all they need to be. Um, yeah, and I think the step back from that, though, from making them sound robotic, is I think a lot of people, first of all, a lot of owners have to first understand that people are capable of doing it.
Mm.
Because I think that from my experience, I've seen a lot of business owners think that their team are not capable of stepping up to do XYZ. Now, you can see over my shoulder there, I've got a book called called Multipliers,
Yeah.
which the fundamental point of that book is that that you believe people are capable of more than they are currently capable of. So it goes back to one of those P's, right? People. So we had the pricing. The next thing that we did actually go into was people. It was not just expanding the team, but actually the abilities of the team, investing your time and effort into the abilities of the team, because that's where really the next step up comes in a business. So if you've got your pricing sorted, and then people, you've got more people is one thing, but if you've got deeper people that have more skills, more ability, more belief, then they're able to do more at that now higher price as well. So investing in people is something that I think a lot of business owners miss out on because they don't see it as a worthwhile exercise.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the boring machine and manufacturing analogy, you would invest in a piece of machinery output output a product. So in this case, you invest in your team in order to output your product as well.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. I mean, a lot of accountants, right? They're very referral based, and it's the amount of work and the reputation that you've built for so long. You're expecting your staff to suddenly become a salesperson, right? And like you kind of like you've just said there, investing in a script to train them on how to speak to clients when they're coming through, and all that type of side of it. It's so important, right? Because you've done all this work, and you want to make sure that bringing the clients on is a success, right? Because that's where the pricing comes from as well. It's how to sell it, what comes with it, all that type of stuff, right? And it's just kind of about the wording and
Yeah,
understanding the client.
yeah, exactly. I think there's two parts to getting your team to sell. One is they need to know what it is they're selling, and
Mm.
two, they need to know how it is what they need to do to sell. And one thing with so on the first one of those, like what is it they're actually selling, that comes from the business owners educating the team on what it is that well, not just what you do, that sounds obvious, but the how to identify those opportunities. So uh, a lot of revenue for accountants comes from sort of upselling and additional activities you might do, advice and stuff like that. Often owners are the only ones that know what to look out for in that scenario. What keywords might you hear in a conversation that makes you go, oh, actually this person needs to put a holding company in, or this person needs to set up a trust, or Alphabet shares, family investment company, whatever it is. And a lot of people kind of want to hold on to that information because it gives them, makes them feel important or whatever. I think the other thing you have to do before you can truly invest in developing your team is you have to become quite lazy
Mm.
because I don't really want to have to do more than I have to do. And so I've spent time with my team teaching them about what to look for in the conversation they're having with their clients. Because if they say this, well, actually, this is what we could be doing for them. This is the thing they need to put in place. So that's the first part: is what is it that actually they need to be talking to clients about? What is it they need to be selling? And then the second part is how to do that selling. And I think a lot of people think selling is a crude word, particularly, again, professional services, going back to being noble, right? You can't possibly expect me to be selling to people, doing the hard sell that you see happening on TV and in movies. But actually, I get my team to join calls with me initially when they haven't, and it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
You're just having a conversation. You're asking a client what their problem is. You're asking a new prospect, well, why did you get in touch with me? What prompted you? Have an accountant at the moment? What is it that's not working for you? And then you realize that actually what you have to offer fits the gap that they have in their business life, whatever it might be. And that's all selling is. It's fitting your solution to their problem. Well, not
Yeah.
fitting, right? Finding the fit, because you don't want to force it in there if it doesn't fit. It's finding that fit between what they need and what you have.
Yeah, I agree totally. It's just finding a solution, right? Yeah, every client's completely different, and it's just speaking to having a conversation. It's all sales is really, and just finding what the answer is or what you can do for people. What do you normally like working on? Like what kind of gets your juices flowing being an accountant? Is it I know we discussed a little bit about kind of like founders and exits and those types of things. Touch a little bit on that and how you can help.
Yeah. So what I definitely don't like working on is the VAT returns and the accounts and all that stuff because one, the team are better at it than me, so I leave them to it. And two, we actually did personality assessments of everybody in the team in this office, overseas, everywhere. And um, when you do that, you start realizing what type of work suits what people best.
Mm,
And for me, it's a lot more about relational things and spending time with clients and with the team from a relationship building perspective. And as I've done that, you actually get to know you start having more in-depth conversations with those people, with those clients. And our team do the same thing, and I encourage them to do it as well. Because what we've found is that most clients don't know where their business is headed for the long term. I said earlier, they might have set it up for a lifestyle choice or whatever it might be, a passion, but they don't really know where they want to get it to or what they're aiming at. And certainly nobody really, well, I say nobody, very few people have thought of how they're intending to exit the business because inevitably an exit's going to happen. You're either going to sell it, pass it on to somebody else, or you're going to hopefully not die while you're running it. An exit is inevitable, right? But nobody has actually thought ahead about it and planned about it. So actually, the thing that we're really seeing at the moment with clients is more people want to talk about how to get their business in a position that it's ready for them to be able to step out of, whether that's hand it over to a management team to carry on leading it and they just still own it in the background, sort of a chairman type of role, whether it's generational passing it on, or whether it is actually building it for sale. So we go through what I like to take clients through is what we call like an exit runway.
mm,
It's kind of a program to get people's businesses ready for them to essentially lift off, right? Because uh, unless you've structured your business to run without you, most people will see the end of selling the end of a business as being their real part where they get to live their life how they want to live it. So yeah, that's the thing that I'm quite enjoying at the moment is working with people on how to plan for selling their business and exiting.
yeah, it's obviously that it's definitely something that maybe a lot of companies don't necessarily probably use accountants for as much, really, right? They probably might go to outsourcing, but they're probably the best people for that, right? Because they know your numbers, they know you inside out. Then if you just have that conversation with accountants, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I suppose if you get the accountant phones you, it's not just that they're
Yeah,
not working with the tax man, they're working against them. They do want you to pay more tax because it means you're growing, right? But
yeah.
they want you to grow. They want you to, to help you
I
with
think
your business, right?
Yeah, I think accountants generally get a bad rep in terms of being quite cautious and all that sort of stuff. And no doubt there are people out there, accountants out there that are kind of only interested in doing that rear view mirror part, where
Mm,
they just looking at what's happened in the past and that's it, reporting on that only. So, but if you can find the ones that um, know what's involved in running a business and can help you in sorting your business out, those are definitely people worth working with. And I say majority probably the other way, where they are just looking at in the rearview mirror and reporting on your 12 months that have gone and your VAT returns and all that stuff. But you do find some out there that are more forward facing and forward looking, and they can add some serious value to your business as well.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, talking of growth, right? most firms, like, obviously I know you're kind of in growth mode right now. I know you had an Essex deal last year, and what made you decide that organic wasn't enough? Like what did you look for in the Essex deal, and what did you look for differently?
I guess the first point about why was organic not enough is probably my ADHD. No,
Is that every founder?
every founder has an element of it. Yeah, exactly. It's like a complete side story. There's an app called Brain FM. I don't know if you heard of it, but they make music to help you focus. Um, and you can choose the level of neural activity that you want from the music, right? And I always had it at low and medium, and then I clicked the high once, and it said this is people with probably with ADHD, and suddenly, yeah, focus was through the roof. So yeah, I think there is an anecdote there of founders probably do have an element of that to some degree. Um, Organic's great. Organic is good. I think there's if you have a really good organic engine and you've managed to build that, then that can be enough to be adding 20 to 30% a year growth. Um, M&A in its acquisition, it just allows you to have step changes. It allows you to go from one plane to a completely different plane above that, right? So the that was one of the main reasons for doing it, was that step change. The accounting industry at the moment is going through a lot of change anyway. There's a lot of M&A activity happening. There's a lot of private equity money. There's a lot of retiring accountants out there because there was a period of time where there was a shortage, well, not a shortage, but there weren't as many of them qualifying as there were that were already in practice. So now there's that that numbers
Decline,
of
yeah.
of accountants over 70 years old is on the up. So there, it's happening in the sector anyway. So it seemed a good opportunity to do that. The key thing is though that there's a lot of people out there saying, "I'll teach you how to buy businesses," right? And it sounds great, but it's actually quite a tricky thing to do. And I know of people who have had no experience of running businesses themselves, who are looking at buying a business, and that's that it's a lot to take on, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many of your listeners deal in property, but it's kind of the whole buy to let thing just with businesses. People have seen, oh yeah, you could buy a house, you can rent it out to somebody. Obviously now there's a lot more regulation that comes with it, but people have seen that and thought, well, okay, yeah, I'll do that, and to an extent that can work.
Mm.
But when you buy a business that's got 8, 9, 10, 12 employees in there, and it's got reporting requirements, it's got regulatory requirements, it's a lot more going on than there is with just buying an asset and renting it out to somebody. So I think it's a great way to be able to step change your business, but it does come with its own pressures and its own headaches. And until you're eyes wide open going into it, it's something that I would not be suggesting people just go off and do because they're seeing somebody on YouTube telling me I can teach you how to do
Yeah, I think I know exactly the person that you're talking about there.
it.
But what surprised you from, like, obviously from your experience, what changes on day one after completion? What surprised you the most first time?
I think people have there's the cliche, right? That there's two things in life that are certain are death and taxes, right? Everyone knows that one. The third one is change. Nobody ever talks about that, but change is an inevitable fact of life, and I think nobody talks about it because people assume that everyone is doesn't like change or everyone's resistant to change. I think that people don't find it natural, but I think that people fundamentally can change and do change because if they didn't, we wouldn't have survived to this point or anything. So, what surprised me actually was how willing the team has been in Essex to adapt to what they're doing,
Mm.
to change the way they look at things, and part of that comes from beating the drum about it as well and everything. We're very consistent in doing that and making sure that we're adapting and trying to stay ahead of the game as much as we can in terms of tech, in terms of what the team are doing and knowing and all that sort of stuff, the conversations they're having with clients, that kind of thing. But I think that is the thing that surprised me the most is if any type of person you'd think would be the ones that would be stuck in their ways would be accountants. been in the same place for 15 years.
Yeah.
That's what I've actually been happiest about, is the way that team has responded to the changes that we've encouraged them to take.
Yeah, definitely. There's always a bit of uncertainty, isn't there, in any business when, someone takes over something or a company buys a company and you're like, what are the owners like? What are they going to change? There's always kind of uncertainty. Usually people leave or like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen here, that type of stuff. But it's always good when there's, people have adapted quite quickly. Change is obviously good. It's always uncertain, but it's always a good thing, right? Like you said, you have to kind of adapt to the new world, and it's forever changing, right?
It is, yeah. And I think, fundamentally, people don't wake up going, I'm going to go into work and be an awkward sod today, or I'm going to go into work and screw things up today. Generally, people want to do a good job. People want to do the right thing and want to um, make people's lives easier, right? And so, and that goes both ways. You can't just change stuff for the sake of changing it. But equally, then, if you do ask for change to happen, those people, the team do generally want to step up and do it. And the ones that don't, well, that's identifies to you the ones that shouldn't be part of that business, really.
Yeah.
One thing we did do last year, so we did the acquisition in April last year. In June, we got the teams all together from the different offices, and we talked about the journey we wanted to go on and all that sort of stuff. And what we ended up talking about, because you could see as I was talking about where we want to get to, some people's faces were lighting up, some people were a little bit kind of showing a bit of dread, and one of the slides I'd already had in there anyway was talking about stars and superstars.
Yeah.
And actually, in a business, you need the stars. The stars are the ones that rock up 9 to 5, do what they've got to do, but they don't have an interest in going the extra mile. They don't want to do that, and that's absolutely fine. As long as they're doing what they have to do in the 9 to 5, great, carry on. You are a star. But then equally, you got the ones that do want to do that extra. They're the superstars. They're the ones that help you grow the business, change the business, whatever it is. And you could see as I was saying this that you select what you want. I don't want to make somebody trying to push somebody to be a superstar if they don't want to be a superstar. If you're just going to be a star, great, carry on being what you're being. And you can see people, the ones that had the dread, their faces, the colour started coming back in their face after that, and going, actually, okay, fine, well, I can just do what I need to do and do it well, and that's going to be appreciated, and that's going to be enough, because you need both. In fact, you need more stars and superstars.
Yeah,
you have
I
too
agree.
many superstars, it's going to be like bedlam. Too many new ideas, nothing actually getting done, and it'd be absolute shocker.
I agree so much on that. I agree so much. When I first started my business, probably 10 odd years ago now, you'd always think like, oh, why isn't people working as hard as me? But like, you just get, I used to call them plodders, but like, you can call them stars. That's probably a better way to do it, right? But at the time, I was like, oh, you're going to have plodders in the business. It is what it is type of thing. But some people just like coming to work, doing what they've got to do and go home, right? They kind of like, and that's fine. And some people want to push forward and learn and grow, whatever it may be. But there's no right and wrong, right? Everyone's completely different. But you need both in the business, exactly like you said. So it's so important.
There's zero right and wrong. And I think that as long as you create the environment where people can pick which one they want to be, you're going to find people that move between them. You're going to find people that they're at a point in their life where they can only be a star or a plodder because they've got young kids, they've got something else going on, they're a parent, whatever it is. And then at some point, if you've created an environment where they can step on, hey, okay, I'm ready to do that extra now, they will come in and they will do that extra. And one lady, we got an example like that where single mum, young child, and was just doing what she had to do. As soon as that child's got older and gone to uni, she is knocking it out of the park now because she can. And she had it within her all the time. Now she has the time and the ability to do it without sacrificing anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's I've felt that firsthand, absolutely. I mean, obviously you're in growth mode right now, Tej. I think you seems like you've got some great systems in place. You've got a great team around you. You're looking to grow. Say you got yourself out of the business, right? Which was always the goal. What's the next mountain? What's the time actually for? What's next?
With the extra time back?
Yeah.
I've got young kids, so make up for some time where maybe I'll put in some extra hours. There's that kind of thing. I think if you go back to like, why do you why do most people start a business? It's to create a lifestyle. But then I think nobody really ever wants to just sit on their backside doing nothing. Even the plodders out there don't want to just do nothing, right? They want to turn up and do what they've got to do. I think what it allows you to do is then decide what becomes. It gives you the space and the time to be able to do stuff because you want to, as opposed to you need to. Something you can make an impact with, as opposed to doing it because you got to make income, right? I think that's probably what you end up swapping. You then start to say, well, what is it I can do? And for me, if I get to that point, Jasmine and I actually have spoken about this a lot. What would you do if you had the time freedom and the money freedom to do what you want? And we keep coming back to, you do something to give back. What is it would be? Education, I think, just because you're such a believer in growth that myself, but also that people can grow more as well. I think some kind of training, education for kids and teens would probably be the thing. Teaching them about business, that kind of stuff. That's where I would go if I had unlimited time and money.
Yeah, fantastic. Last one. One piece of advice for the owner listening, I suppose, who's doing their version of 13 days in a week right now. What would you give them?
The one thing I would say is, what is work out your one thing, right? Where I started this off was, what's the one thing that you can change right now that means you knock over other dominoes? What's that biggest domino in the business at the moment that's in the way of where you want to get to? Is it most people? I think pricing is going to be the thing. Some people, it's perhaps going to have to learn how to let go of stuff. They perhaps need to spend some time investing their energy into their team. I think if that's what it is, and actually get some clarity on that, a few early mornings with a pen and a paper, and just kind of write down what it is you're thinking.
Yeah, brilliant. So where can we find you then, Tej? What we on LinkedIn? What's the website, etc.?
Yeah, so website is nijjeraccountants.co.uk, Nijjer, or you can drop me an email if anybody really wants to. I'll give my email address out. It's tej@nijjeraccountants.co.uk. Not rocket science. People probably could have figured that out anyway. Otherwise, yeah, LinkedIn. I guess could drop some links in the notes.
Yeah, will do. Yeah, no, brilliant.
Happy to pick up a conversation if anybody's got anything they want to go through.
Fantastic, brilliant. So that's Tej Gill from Nijjer Accountants. Go check them out on socials and also on their website. I'm sure Tej will be happy to discuss any inquiries or information that you need about your business. So thanks for coming and thanks for joining us, Tej, on Build Up.
Lovely. Thanks, Freddie. Cheers.
Thanks.